to the Minute Women podcast. My name is Grace.
And I'm Linnea.
And today, so we're just going to jump right into it because we have so much to go over today.
Okay.
In terms of content. This one is a little different than our other episodes because Linnea probably knows just as much about this topic, probably more about this topic than I do.
What?
This week we are doing the Bluenose Heritage Minute because it's the 150th anniversary.
Sure is.
Of the Bluenose.
Yeah, of the original Bluenose.
The Queen of the Atlantic.
100th.
It's the 100th. You're right. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's the 100th episode of the
Whoa,
Bluenose.
Grace. See, I do know more. It's
the 100th anniversary.
It's the 100th anniversary of the original Bluenose right now, which is kind of cool. It's her centennial. Yeah, that's a centennial.
So if you look on your dimes,
Yep.
we're talking about the ship.
That's her.
It's on the Canadian 10-cent piece.
Yep, not the queen, the other her.
The other queen on the other side of it.
The Queen of the North Atlantic.
North Atlantic. See? You
That's
even know her
her
nickname more than me.
That's her. Do you want to know why ships and boats are called she's?
Yes.
Okay, because it's kind of weird. Because why?
Why bother?
Why bother? Why bother giving it a pronoun at all? But anyway, traditionally, ships and boats referred to as she's because, and this is like very much like fisherman's fable, but like a woman, if you treat her right and take good care of her, she'll do what you're asking her to do, and she'll take care of you. So if you treat her right, if you like keep her happy, she'll work well for you.
She'll be a good boat.
She'll be a good lady.
Sea wife.
She'll take care of you.
As always, there's a fun little piece of misogyny
Obviously,
in all of our traditions.
riddled through history.
History is riddled with misogyny.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but that's why. That's why they're called girls. But this is exciting. This is fun.
Yeah, and it's a good heritage minute. So the heritage minute is them. It's the Bluenose's last race.
Yes.
And it's the Bluenose racing an American ship in the International Fisherman's Trophy tournament
Which
or
is,
series.
The Fisherman's Trophy is actually at the Fisher's Museum in Lunenburg.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, they deserve it. They won it way more.
Yeah. It was never, that race never happened again.
Yeah, after that one.
So that was the last one. And so all of the trophies that the Bluenose won, the most winningest schooner, racing schooner, are all at the Fisher's Museum in Lunenburg.
Yeah,
and they're big and shiny.
I mean, the Heritage Minute is oddly like, let's make it look really old timey,
which is a weird vibe.
Yeah, like most of them are like, okay, it's a period piece, but we're gonna use modern for the time. Like videography, but this one is not.
No,
like
the first time I watched that minute, I thought it was original footage.
Yeah.
Until you realize that it's not.
It's
like,
definitely not.
It's definitely redone.
And they have like the radio announcer calling the race on one of the boats, I guess, which I don't know if that's how they would have called the race.
I don't know if that's real.
I don't think that's how it happens.
Yeah, I don't think that's true. But
and also the ships are like literally neck and neck while they're racing.
Yeah.
And the Bluenose was part of some really close races, but like schooner close races are like you're like a minute ahead of the other boat.
Oh yeah, or at least like multiple seconds, like half a minute, like 30 seconds like ahead. Like, yeah, for those of you who don't know, things move slower in water. And the Bluenose is a 299 ton vessel, and so it's not like, I mean, you know, she can turn on a dime, but a bit of funniness there, but a little bit of humor.
A little bit of funniness.
We
like to make this podcast fun.
I like to make it fun for all of you listening. That's my goal.
That's your dose of fun for the week.
There it is. You're done.
Now back to our regular scheduled program.
Which is boring. No, just kidding. But yeah, so I mean, and I sailed on the Bluenose 2, obviously, which is a pretty accurate replica of the original Bluenose.
Which I guess we should have stated. That is why Linnea knows more about the Bluenose
Yeah,
than
that's
me.
why I know more. Not just because I'm from Lunenburg, but because I actually sailed on her as crew, which was a really cool experience. I recommend anyone between the ages of 20 and 30, if you want an incredible summer experience, go apply, hop on the Bluenose, you actually don't need any sailing experience. And as far as the current captain of the Bluenose, Phil Watson, is concerned, I would say that he would like you to have less experience because he would like to teach you his way to do things, not unteach you the way that you have previously learned. He likes a fresh slate. At least when I was there, he did. It's been a few years, but.
So should we dive into this history? This story that you probably already know.
No, I'm excited. I want to hear.
If I get one fact in here that you don't know, I feel like I will have done my job.
Okay, I'm excited.
Okay.
I'm ready.
So, Bluenose, just the word, the term, Bluenose is a nickname for Nova Scotians. Yeah. So you and I are Bluenoses.
We're Bluenosers, yeah.
It dates back to at least the 18th century. The first recorded use was in 1785 by Reverend Jacob Bailey, a loyalist clergyman living in the Annapolis Royal after the American Revolution.
A valley boy.
A valley guy. Writing to a friend that year, Bailey complained about the outcome of recent elections, where party lines had been clearly drawn throughout Nova Scotia between the newly arrived Loyalists, Americans will know them as Tories, and the New England planters, who were the European residents who lived here before. Then they'd been living in Nova Scotia since the 1760s.
Since they abolished the Acadians.
Yes. Yeah. Once they kicked out the Acadians, they were the longest standing European residents.
Yeah.
Bailey noted sourly that, quote, the Bluenoses use a vulgar appellation, exerted themselves into the utmost of their power and cunning. In another letter the next year, Bailey continued his complaints by listing several regrettable aspects of life in Nova Scotia, one of them being, quote, violent contentions between the Loyalists and the old inhabitants called Bluenoses.
Interesting.
So the first two records of the word Bluenose are both bad.
Well, but that's a funny fact, too, because I've only ever heard it called Bluenosers. So, Bluenoses, that's funny.
Yeah, it's evolved over time, I guess. The Oxford English Dictionary awards the first published use of the term to Thomas Chandler Halliburton in The Clockmaker, or The Sayings and Doings of Samuel Slick of Slickville.
Sam Slick.
I love the old way we used to name books and pamphlets.
Yeah.
It's like there's no room for imagination.
None.
It's just like I will explicitly tell you what this book is about.
Yeah.
In the title. You don't even have to read the book.
You don't have to open a book. That's why you can read a book by its cover.
Exactly. Sam was a fictionalized Yankee traveling salesman, sharp as they come, whose specialty was clocks. And when he described his standard sales pitch, he chuckled heartily over the typical gullible response of his Nova Scotia customers. When Bluenose hears that, he thinks he's got a bargain.
Okay.
Again, an insult.
This is funny, though. I haven't heard this before.
In the end, who knows what the word really means or where it comes from. Maybe it describes Nova Scotian noses in the winter. Perhaps it began as the name of a mottled, purplish-blue potato once common in Annapolis Valley and was eaten by everyone. Regardless of its origin, the term caught on, and from the mid-19th century, Bluenose was widely used in the names of publications, incorporated companies, businesses, railway services, and boats.
Yeah. One kind of thing that I've heard where the term Bluenose comes from is that fishing mittens that used to be made had blue dye in them.
Oh, okay.
And so when people would, just like the yarn that was used, there was a lot of like blue dye used in yarns, apparently, in wool. And when they'd rub their nose, like on the boat, their nose would get blue. And so that's like one I have heard. But.
Yeah, I've also heard it was like a spin on like a red nose, like, which is like a drinking thing.
Oh, okay.
Like people get like red in the face.
Yeah.
It'd be like blue. I don't know.
That's funny.
But yeah, who knows where it really comes from?
Who knows?
But that is the best we know. Angus Walters was born on June 9th, 1881.
Yeah, I born on my Nana's birthday. My Nana was born on his birthday.
Ooh, that's her spirit animal. It's like, what's your astrological sign? Angus Walters.
Yeah.
He was one of 12 children, born into a time and a family awash with maritime traditions.
Yeah.
As a young boy, Angus was thrilled to hear the fishermen's stories and couldn't wait to embark on his own adventures. Angus didn't have to wait very long on the wharf. In 1894, at just the age of 13, Angus's father brought him aboard for a 6-month fishing season. From April to September, Angus toiled as a throater, which is the person who cuts the throats of fishes.
Yep. It's so funny because, I mean, any kid who's grown up in Lunenburg, the Fisheries Museum of the Atlantic is, like, so ingrained in you. It's like every school trip every year was the Fisheries Museum. Like, the free days in the summers, like, your parents would take you because it was air conditioned. It's like, I know I can give that tour. And it's like, it's just like, this is the Angus Walters exhibit on the Bluenose. It's like, yeah. But yeah, throater is possibly, like, the grossest position
Definitely
on the boat. It's like, it's what the kids do. It's like what the lowest of the low does. And yeah, it's cutting cod throats, which is gross.
Yeah. And he was actually, like, kind of old for kids to go on a ship. Like, you could easily expect to see, like, 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds working on
at
schooners.
that age. I wouldn't say, and I don't know for sure, but I wouldn't say for, like, maybe a trip that long.
No.
Yeah, maybe like a shorter stint for a younger kid. But yeah, he's pretty much like 14, 15 is kind of when boys started going out and being part of the family business.
Yeah, and it was, I saw somewhere
who needs school in the 8th grade?
Well, that was the thing. His dad was like, I want you to get an education, so you'll stay in school until you're 13.
And then you're done.
And then you're done. Then you're good.
Yeah.
What else can that building teach you?
Yeah.
At the age of 15, Angus was promoted to doryman, alone on the sea in a small wooden boat, hauling, baiting, and setting fishing lines. Dory fishing was arguably the toughest job on a schooner and very dangerous.
Super dangerous. So the Bluenose 2 actually carries traditional dories as well. And we, like, I got to take them out and, like, and go on the dory.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it's cool. The dories at that time, now, I don't know if their dories had sails. Because dories are built to have, like, a sail that kind of goes in it.
I think they must.
Traditionally, like, when you see, like, pictures of, like, dories, it's just, like, 2 men, like, in a rowboat, basically. Yeah. But they all do have, like, a place for a sail to go in it.
Right.
Yeah. So, and usually I think that's what they did when they were out. Because you'd kind of go rather far away from the boat. Yeah. And then come back, which I'm sure you're going to talk about. I'm sorry.
No.
Getting ahead of myself.
No, yeah. So, like... Yeah, like basically, like when you're out in a dory, you're not like hanging around close to the boat. You're like going out and setting lines.
And it's
stuff.
foggy on the Grand Banks.
Yeah, no, it's some of the like scariest seas to be out on.
Yeah,
and Angus learned this very quickly. His first trip out in a dory was like a disaster.
Yeah.
Out on the ocean, Angus and his dory skipper were caught in a thick fog. They became hopelessly lost, and hours went by, and eventually night fell. Finally, the fog lifted, and off in the distance, they could see the running lights of their schooner, and they made it back.
Yeah.
But, like...
Scary.
You know, it's just like, well, you're basically like a cork.
No, it's how a lot of fishermen were lost.
Yeah.
From going away from the boat. It wasn't necessarily being on the boat. It was when you'd, like, leave on a dory and, like, go out.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
A few years later, still as a teenager, Angus learned his next lesson on the dangers of the sea. He was now a first mate on a ship captained by his older brother John. One night, both of the young men were out on the deck when a large wave washed over them and took his brother overboard. Angus knew his brother couldn't swim and jumped to action, which is always so surprising to me.
And also super common.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of fishermen can't swim.
Yeah.
Which is stupid. Yeah, but also, I think part of the reason is because, like, Lunenburg, for example, living in the town of Lunenburg, the harbor's not really swimming water.
No.
Like, it's not a beachfront. It's a harbor, and especially at that time, which, I mean, I guess people didn't know how detrimental it was, but it's where all the sewage went. And so it's not exactly where your parents are throwing you in, and you're working too hard to get to enjoy. Swimming is a leisure activity.
Yeah, I mean, it takes time to learn.
Yeah, it's like you're not gonna, like, go to school by, like, swimming through the harbor. Like, it's not essential. It's not walking or running. It's you know, it's a leisure activity that you have to learn. It's a learned skill. And so when your father and mother don't swim, who's going to teach you to swim? Who's going to teach your kids how to swim?
Yeah, there's no local pool.
No, it's a bit of a cycle. And so, yeah, many fishermen had no idea how to swim at all, which is another reason why a lot of lives were lost.
And I read something that was saying that it's almost like there's no point for a lot of these fishermen because the thing that's going to get you is that it's just so cold.
The thing that's going to kill you is the cold. That's also another true.
So even if you could swim, you're just, like, extending the hardship. Like, you're just exerting yourself for no reason.
Exactly.
which thankfully that didn't happen to Angus's brother. Angus was able to take control of the crew, and his brother actually managed to grab hold of one of the dories last second and pull himself to safety.
Oh, thank God.
So his brother was fine. But,
Good.
you know, a lot of harsh realities when you're working on the sea
Yeah.
for 6 months a year since the age of 13.
Yeah.
By the age of 23, Angus had already spent a decade at sea. He was now a captain in command of his first ship, the Minnie M. Cook.
Yep.
Angus was now considered a veteran of the Atlantic fishery, and he had earned the respect of his men in his crew. His son, Spike Walters, remembered him saying, "He might have been small, but he was mighty. All you had to do was sail with him on a fishing trip, and you'd come back and you'd know he had fight in him somewhere, because he was a person that when he ordered you to do something, he wanted it done. He didn't want you to fool around. If you fooled around, he just as much as say, will throw you overboard." They used to say he was like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Because in all of the pictures, he's this like little man.
He was quite small. He's such a, you know, faces are ingrained in you, like, especially from like money, like the Queen's face, just ingrained,
Yeah.
like faces that you see everywhere. But in Lunenburg, Angus Walters' face is like so ingrained in everyone. And I don't even know if it's what he actually looked like. It's just the face like everybody sees. It's just like this little old man. Like I don't know if I've ever seen a picture of him young. Like he's always just a little old man in a leather jacket who
He was
looks like
always old.
he smokes way too much.
Other than fishing, Angus was perfecting another skill, a talent that would bring him and the fishing industry fame in the years to come. He enjoyed a reputation of being a sail dragger.
Yeah.
Now, what is a sail dragger exactly?
So a sail dragger, what I know as the term, is just someone who basically likes to go really fast. And it's also just kind of the style that you do that in.
Yeah.
So it's being able to utilize, I mean, like most things in their invention, the sails were used to propel the boat forward, and kind of how you use those sails was going to help you do that. That was the goal. It was to move forward. It was just to move. Whereas a sail dragger, it's you're kind of utilizing those sails to make you go fast and make you go in a certain direction or make you change directions instead of just like the basics. It's like my Toyota Corolla is a base model, okay? And that's kind of, you know, it does what a car is meant to do. It drives, you know, it stops, it reverses, it does the basic things. It's not a Maserati, okay? But it's also how you use that car. I have my Toyota. I could put a spoiler on the back. I could, like, change the rims. I could do other car things. Do what?
Neon.
Exactly.
Let's do neon on the little blue.
I could do other things that would make her like cooler or ways to use her, I suppose. Who knows? I don't. But that's kind of the idea of a sail dragger. It's kind of utilizing what you have and not it means he's starting to kind of use her for racing, not the purpose of fishing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because so he's gaining this like reputation. He's pushing vessels to their limit.
Yeah.
And he's always known for like carrying extra sails. It's like,
yeah.
Just in case.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, well, if we like push her this fast, we're going to need something to replace that.
Yeah.
Or we're going to throw up
rip
extra
it.
sails. Really got to go fast.
Yeah.
His next ambition was to own his own schooner, and he gained the support of local businessmen, and soon he was owning a new ship called the Mariel B. Walters.
Yeah.
With his career under full sail, Angus could turn his heart to another love. Her name was Maggie Tanner, a lively young woman from a fishing family in Lunenburg. At 19, Maggie was 7 years younger than Angus and was considered a good catch.
Good catch.
Good catch. She had a sense of humor and a deeply rooted sense of family values and traditions. Maggie and Angus were married in 1908, and within 2 years, their first son, Gilbert, was born. The next year, Spike arrived, and then Stuart was born 4 years later. And they were a loving family, but Angus was often separated from his young wife and children. At least 6 months a year he's spending at sea every year, even when he's racing.
Yeah, no, she is known as being a pretty badass lady. Like, she took care of the home and the family, and the home actually still exists in Lunenburg.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so, and it was a museum up until fairly recently, the Angus Walters House Museum, which was technically, I guess, a part of the Fisheries Museum of the Atlantic. I mean, it's not close to it. It's across the harbor, actually. It's very close. It's on your way to the golf course in Lunenburg and across from the school that's there now.
Okay.
However, the house is now used as Bluenose Coastal Action Group's headquarters, which is an environmental organization.
Oh, cool.
And they use it. And it's still, I mean, I remember being a kid in elementary school, and you'd go, especially at Christmas. They always did a big deal at the Walters house at Christmas. It was all decorated and like the traditional like Christmas decorations. And there was someone there who was being his wife and who would like tell you through, and like Angus was out fishing and she'd like make you cookies, and yeah, it was a cute little gimmick in the town. But yeah, the building is still there. It's just
cool.
And it's a pretty like, it's nothing special, just like a typical like old house. His captain's chair is there, which I feel like you might get into later. If not, we can discuss that. But his captain's chair is there. It's one of the things he took from the Bluenose, which we'll get into. But he took the captain's chair when he finished, and yeah, so that's at the house.
That's cool.
Is still there. Yeah, so it's cool.
And it's also a big part of the fishing industry that kind of gets left out sometimes, is the reality that the main breadwinner is doing a really dangerous job and not around for 6 months of the year sometime.
Yep.
Like, they may be able to come in to shore every once in a while, but they've really got to take advantage of the fact that you only have this window where you can bring in an income. So the other half of the year, you're going to have to be able to live off of that catch.
Yeah.
And so, like, sea wives or, like, fishermen's wives, they're just kind of at home alone for 6 months of the year. It's crazy.
Yep.
Angus's reputation as a fisherman was soaring. He had become a high liner skipper, hauling in record catches and high profits for his shareholders. So that's like a big part of it is so you could like own your own ship.
Mm-hmm.
You need people to invest in you having the ship, and in return they get like portions of your profit.
Yeah, which is kind of still the premise of the fishing industry now in a lot of places. You know, you're owned by a company. So, like, there are draggers that are owned by Highliner. And then, you know, there's a captain of that boat, and then you go out and you're providing product to that company.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
By 1920, schooner captains in Nova Scotia and New England wanted a diversion from the hardships of fishing. They looked for a new challenge, something to put their sailing skills and schooners to the test, and they decided to organize a real race under real conditions with real fishermen.
Yep.
The idea led to the establishment of the International Fishermen's Race Series. Mm-hmm. So this was a race for schooners that were actually fishing schooners. So they're not race boats.
No.
These boats do the work for most of the year, and then they do this like race in addition to that. The best Canadian and the best American fishing schooners were put forward as champions. And that's the other thing. It's the International Fishermen's Race, but it's just Canada and America. It's nobody else.
Yeah, and it's really just Lunenburg and Gloucester.
It's really just two cities.
to be honest. Yeah.
The race was put together very quickly for the first time in September of 1920. There was an elimination race at first. So this is like, it's like the semifinals basically. So you have like Nova Scotian in this case, but like Canadian ships kind of racing down to see who will be the Canadian champion, and then American ships racing down to see who will be the American champion. Angus desperately wanted to be a contender in the International Fishermen's Race. He felt he could win the cup for Nova Scotia. In the Canadian Elimination Series, Angus raced against another local schooner, the Delawana, captained by Tom Himmelman. At the start of the race, Angus put up every inch of the sail, 9,000 square feet of canvas.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, he did. He pushed his vessel and crew to their very limits and gambled that his ship could take the strain. But 5 miles short of the finish line, his ship broke at her fore topmast.
Yeah.
Angus lost the race by 6 minutes.
Yeah.
He would not be able to race for Canada, and the Delawana instead competed for Canada against the American ship, the Esperanto, from Gloucester, Massachusetts. Angus watched the Esperanto win the race and take home the silver cup and the $4,000 prize home to Massachusetts. And this was also like, it's in Lunenburg, the first race. And it's kind of like they organized it. They have the cup here, and they just get to watch it like sail away.
And they just get to watch it go away. They also, the story goes that they put a broom on their topmast.
Oh, they cheated.
No.
Oh.
So when they won and when they were leaving, they put a broom on their topmast to say that they swept the competition.
Oh.
They thought it was so funny. So yeah, they stuck a broom and they were like, ha ha, we big winners, you're big losers. Like, I mean, like, comedy in the early 1900s was rough, but
hilarious.
So funny.
But something like that, the sight of that, you know, that is the ultimate chip on Angus's shoulder.
Oh,
just like
hell yeah.
watching this ship sailing off into the horizon with his cup, his prize money, even though he wasn't even the ship that got to race. He's just like, I never again.
Real bitter.
So he's driven to compete the following year. The main problem is his family. So after 12 years of marriage, he was facing a real dilemma at home. Maggie really wasn't doing well with Angus constantly being away. Of course, it's like emotionally hard, but she's also pretty regularly sick.
Yeah.
And their children, they have 3 boys. They need their dad around. And if Angus was going to pursue his racing dream, it would mean even less time at home. That winter in Lunenburg, Angus was torn between his 2 loves. He couldn't stop thinking about the loss to the Americans, but at the same time, he was worried about Maggie's health and happiness. And finally, he made his choice. And in the fall of 1920, Angus Walters and a committee of Nova Scotian politicians and businessmen were determined to bring the international trophy home. Mm-hmm. So they called on a guy named William Bill James
Rui. Yeah. It's
got a fun
weird.
Accent.
No, but it's like, you'd think that it would be French, but it's like Rui. Like in every textbook, it's just like, that's how you say it. Just Rui. Like it's very like English version.
So Bill was born in the south end of Halifax,
Nova
Scotia, on April 27th, 1879. From a young age, he was in love with sailing. As an adolescent, he made and sailed 1.5-meter model boats. He learned to crew with the Royal Nova Scotian Yacht Squadron and taught himself naval architecture.
He sure did. It's just funny because Rui is such an example of like Angus Walters grew up out on fishing schooners when he was like 13 years old, and he like has no education. You just picture him in his little like rolled up wool beanie and like eating eating lobster and that being poor people's food. And Rui grew up in the south end of Halifax,
tea and crumpets,
sailing at RNYSS Royal Nova RNSYSS. Yes, which is still a very prominent sailing club today. It's where some of the best sailors out of Nova Scotia are like kind of born and bred through their program. They do a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
And so Rui was definitely like that kind of privilege in the sailing community, which, you know, Angus came from the life of fishermen and Rui came from the life of like of pleasure craft, if you will.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so like, you know, like Angus is familiar with ships that are like their primary function is fishing, which of course is important that they be fast. That's like a part of being a good fishing vessel.
Yeah.
But like Rui is like, I design race ships.
Yeah.
Like that's what he's most familiar with. So he teaches himself for the most part. He just like reads books about boat design, but he did enroll in classes in mechanical drafting at the Victoria College of Art and Design, which is now NASCAD, or the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design. Yeah. His experience was that of a yacht designer for fellow members of the squadron while he worked in the family of soft drink business. So he works in this like family-owned soft drink business.
I did not know this.
Which is called Family Soda Water Business. I don't know.
You've taught me something new.
Coca-Cola?
I had no idea.
He made fizzy water.
Cool.
And he kind of like owns, I think he like owns stock in this building.
He was the original Soda Stream.
Yeah. Bill created more than 100 designs for commercial vessels, including many yachts such as the schooner Blue Dolphin, 2 fleets of freighter for Newfoundland and the Arctic, ferries. Also in his lifetime, Bill created plans for World War II sectional landing barges for the United Kingdom.
Cool.
So he's a very experienced designer of schooners, and so he's called upon to design a race ship that would also be a functioning fishing vessel, and she was named the Bluenose.
Yes.
Angus was chosen to be her master because of his track record as a superb fisherman, ability to control a crew, and his experience sailing. Angus,
and because he was like, no one but me.
Yeah, he was also just like, how dare you? Don't you dare call on that other
And they're like,
guy
we're
again."
not Angus. And he's like, don't you dare. It's me. They're like, Angus, we're not. And he's like, silence. They're like, okay.
Angus was at the shipyard every day during her construction and would offer advice. On one occasion, he pointed out that his men were, quote, not midgets and would need more room in the forecastle, which gave her a signature knuckle in her bow.
Yeah. So kind of how ships work underneath, below decks. So when you're below, which is not downstairs, it's below deck.
I want to go downstairs on the ship.
Yeah, no, those are silly things you don't say. So 4 is kind of like the foredecks or like forward, or the forecastle or forecastle.
Okay.
Is the front, kind of the pointy end that goes forward. Okay, and that's always going to be 4. It doesn't matter what direction you're going in. That's always forward. Okay,
Right.
so that's 4. And then going backwards that's back aft. So like it's kind of like after, like an afterthought. It's the back aft. Yeah, and so that's towards the back. Now, like I said, below decks, that front portion is where you're gonna sleep.
Okay.
So where the boat kind of like comes, or the ship kind of comes towards as a point, that's where like bunks would be.
Okay.
And then that's also where you're gonna eat. So traditionally on the Bluenose, kind of that forward part, the forecastle, is bunks. So like 2 rows of bunks, and then a big table, and then next is the galley, and then moving back further is the officers' lounge, so where the officers eat, the officers' salon, and then back further is the girls' cabins, which would have previously been where all the fish and shit goes. Yeah, and then that's where on the current Bluenose too is where the female washrooms are, and where the engineer's cabin is, and where the cook's cabin is, and the cook's cabin is closer to the galley, but anyway, so the forecastle is the most forward point,
Right. And they needed extra room because they're tall, I guess, to sleep. Like, they need more room for their bunks.
On a traditional fishing schooner, and even like draggers when they first started, the beds were like 4 feet, like long. And you've got like men who are like literally 6 feet or more is kind of the standard height, and you've got them like crunched up into these little beds for 6 months.
For 6 months, yeah. So they had the luxury of adding a little bit of room there.
Good.
So on March 26th, 1921, the Bluenose was launched. It was a big day for the town of Lunenburg in the province of Nova Scotia. Angus was smitten with her. He talked to her constantly, and he knew he had the vessel to beat the Americans.
So that's a very known fact about Angus Walters, is that he talked to the Bluenose a lot. Like,
so
he
weird.
would talk to her, he would like stroke her. He's known, and it shows it in the Heritage Minute that he's like, come on, just like one more time, and then you can, and then you caress. Like, this is all
like, the crew is panicking, and he's just like, well, Bluenose, we're doing it again.
No, it's like very legit. Like, he spoke to her as if she literally was his wife, which, I mean, he spends just as much time with her as he does his wife in the second half of his career. So, but it is a known thing that Angus Walters really liked to talk to her.
So she was fast in any wind and responded easily to his commands. Angus was in his glory, and this was his chance to prove himself and bring the cup home. In the first elimination race, the Bluenose gave everything Angus asked of her, defeating 7 other schooners. 2 days later, he won another elimination series to become the Canadian representative in the International Fisherman's Trophy. Angus sailed the Bluenose to Gloucester and returned with the ultimate prize. The following year, Angus defended the title, to no one's surprise except the Americans. The key to Angus's success was his knowledge of the Bluenose. The vessel was part of him, and he knew every inch and line and canvas and wood, and he knew exactly the breaking point of everything. So, you know, you can push something to the limit when you know what the limit is.
Exactly. And one interesting fact that that you didn't touch on is that you said it at the beginning, that in order to compete in the Fisherman's Trophy race, you had to be an actual fishing schooner.
Yeah.
So the building of the Bluenose was actually really rapid, because they had to finish building the ship so that it could go do
a season.
So the Bluenose was built, And I can't be 100% correct, but I think it was 4 months. It was insanely fast to build a ship of this size, just because she had to have done a season of fishing before she was allowed to compete.
Interesting.
And so they very rapidly built her. And then sent her out, and she fished. I mean, I would assume, I don't think that she was pushed very hard on her fishing season. So at the Smith and Rulin shipyard where the Bluenose was built, it was actually kind of a quick process because they had to get her out to do that fishing. So
and like, what's the timeline on a normal vessel usually?
God, at that time, like, I don't know, because it was such a career-driven force, and you had a lot more people dedicated to it.
Right
Now, like a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean,
but yeah, no, this is interesting. That's a good point. Like, because like this is a very specific series that it races in.
Yeah, and so it had to be done really, really fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These back-to-back international victories made Angus and the Bluenose celebrities. There were parades and parties. Angus was asked to speak at lodges and institute meetings. He became a hometown hero, and eventually that spread to the province and the whole country. The newfound celebrity had its price, though. It kept Angus away even longer from Maggie and his kids, who idolized him but missed him dearly. Throughout these winning years, the Americans were desperate to restore their damaged pride. They hired the best designers to craft the sleekest, fastest ships. Money was no object. By far, the best American contender was the Columbia. Mm-hmm. She was skipped by Ben Pine, a well-respected Gloucester fisherman. Ben took no chances. He handpicked the crew of captains and sailed the Columbia to Halifax for the International Fishermen's Series. The world took a deep breath and tuned into the race, which was brutal. They stretched both vessels to their absolute limits, and there was an occasion where sometimes the vessels would try and get a little closer to shore to try and get a little bit ahead of the other one. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that's like... I don't know how the track is laid out, but I guess it's like being in the inner lap of a race course.
It's kind of like, if you think about it too, the closer you are to shore, the less wind there is.
Oh,
and
okay.
So when you're out really far, there's a lot more wind. So if the wind is going in your favor, that's great. Right. But if the wind is coming against you, you want to get closer to shore so that you can try and like be less like having the wind pushing on you.
Okay.
But also, depending on the racetrack, that could also add time, so you have to really like navigate that because you're kind of going off course.
Right.
So like if the finish line is kind of directly in front of you, you're like veering off to like stay out of the wind, so you kind of have to calculate that. So they have to be really, it's true that the captains had to know so much about the ship in order to be able to make her work exactly like how they wanted.
Right. So in this instance, they're both trying to get close to shore, but at one point the vessels got too close to each other. Oh. So they're actually like on top of each other basically. And the boom from the Bluenose swung and caught the Columbia, and both ships were damaged in this process.
Yeah.
But the Bluenose managed to get clear of the Columbia and crossed the finish line nearly 3 minutes ahead of the Columbia. The Bluenose won once again, but the next day the committee changed the rules the day before the next race and contested the Bluenose victory.
Yes.
So do you know about this story? It's very confusing to me.
I do.
Because so they basically changed a rule, and then they said that the previous day the Bluenose had gone around a buoy the wrong way. And so they stripped the victory from her and awarded the cup to the Columbia, even though that rule wasn't in place the day of the race.
And let me tell you, Angus was pissed. So, and I don't know.
Like, that makes no sense.
So, what happened? Do you know, are you going to talk about how he reacted to that?
Yeah. So Angus was furious, stating that they had won fairly given the rules that had been set the morning of the race.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, Ben Pine and the crew of the Columbia agreed and refused to accept the trophy.
So that was the deal, is basically that, you know, there is a special relationship between Gloucester and Lunenburg. They're both small fishing communities that spend a lot of time out together on the Grand Banks. And, you know, it's kind of like... trying to think of a job to compare it to, but you're both doing your job for your community, for your people, and so you do have a camaraderie. And as much as there was a competition because you know you're two of the best, there's also, you know, when you're at the top, the only person you can relate to is that person who's at the top with you.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the captain of the Columbia was basically like, no, that's stupid. If you did this to me, like, I'd be just as pissed.
Yeah.
And so they refuse to take it, which is the Bluenose has never lost a race. Isn't exactly true. It's the Bluenose has never lost a series.
Right.
So people say that she was the most winningest ship, but they're in that circumstance, which was, she went around a buoy the wrong way, which wasn't really a rule. And so Pine was like, that's dumb. But the story goes is that when this ruling came through, I thought, but I could be wrong, that there was one race left in the series.
Yeah, so they have one more race.
Yeah, so they have one more race. And Angus is like, holler up, boys, we're leaving. And he rolls out and he's like, peace. Like, like deuces.
So it's a series of races. I guess we should clarify. It's not like one race that wins everything.
Yeah.
But so this forced the committee to basically ask both teams to race again. So they're like, okay, so we can't take this win away from the Bluenose because neither of the teams are accepting that. So please, we'll just start over. Like, do the race again with this new rule in place. But Angus refused.
Yep.
Unless they put up a new cup with new prize, he was just going to sail away to Lunenburg the next day. And he did.
And he did.
The rule changes had soured Angus and the rest of the racers, and there would not be another Fisherman's Cup for 8 years.
No, and that's
so they feel very betrayed.
Well, and that's the thing, too, is that the Americans also felt betrayed. They were like, if we're going to win, we want to actually win. We don't want to be given the prize because you made up a stupid rule. Like, that's not what this is. We are, like, hella competitive men. Like...
And it's also hard when you're like, well, there's only 2 of us, so if one person is abstaining, we abstain too.
Yeah. You know, like I said, you have that camaraderie of like, it's just us.
So Angus was now considered among the best skippers on the Atlantic, because like you said, like he's still a fisherman, like in addition to doing these races. For example, during the storm of 1926, which is like storm of the century, Angus managed to survive a night at sea near Sable Island, which is like
the August
Gales, which like the Sable Island is like a ship graveyard.
Yeah.
But where this night 50 Lunenburg fishermen lost their lives, he manages to like stay afloat, save his crew.
The August gales were pretty horrific. We still get, you hear about like nor'easters and gales. They still do happen. But now there's like sonar and GPS. That's another thing you need to remember. He's going out and doing this shit with nothing.
Yeah.
Like, except like, lick your finger and like, where's the wind coming from? Like, it's so much more, it's just, I mean, you have nothing.
It takes
you have
a
no
lifetime
direction.
of experience.
Oh, 100%. Like, you have no technical equipment other than like a compass and the stars and like your own like wits to be able to move a 299 ton.
Yeah, and it also
piece of wood.
It makes it a little more sense why this race series is between just 2 fishing communities, because a huge part of the skill set is like knowing the waters that you're in. So you're not going to like bring up a ship from, the Caribbean or something and just be like, all right, we're going to race in these waters.
Because you don't want people to die. That's not good for media. Like this was a huge deal. Like everybody was listening to this on the radio. People were out watching. Like this was a big deal. It was in all the papers, like nationally and beyond. Like this was the top thing to pay attention to.
The International Fisherman's Trophy was reinstated for 1 year in 1931. The Bluenose won the trophy, but was losing the race against time.
Yeah.
The age of the schooner was sailing away and being replaced with diesel. In 1933, the worldwide economic depression was causing distress everywhere. It was no longer easy to earn a living fishing. Angus tried to adjust to the times. The Bluenose, now 16 years old, had engines installed. It was a desperate attempt to extend the schooner's life working for the Grand Banks.
Yeah, it's also hard because in that time, draggers started to come through.
Yeah.
So the Bluenose is like line fishing, and I'm not saying they all stood there with fishing rods, but it's kind of like, you go out on your dories and you drop multiple lines, and then you haul up fish on those lines. And same thing from the actual ship itself. But draggers they just
Have a
cast
huge old
big
net.
nets out and drag up a ton, which is what, killed the cod industry. Thank you. It's not sustainable. But at the time, they didn't know, and it was, you thought that there were fish forever.
Yeah. And during the economic depression, it's a way of guaranteeing you're going to get a huge amount of fish and fewer people to employ to actually run the draggers. So for like a boat owner, it makes sense.
100%.
But yeah, they're definitely not environmentally friendly. No. They tear up the whole ecosystem on the bottom because they just like drag along the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah.
So the Bluenose, kind of as a symbol, I guess, is a bit of a double-edged sword for Angus because it contains so much happiness for him, but also the ship represents this massive sacrifice. The Bluenose stole precious time from Angus and his family that was ultimately lost forever when, in 1937, Maggie died from a lingering illness.
Yeah.
Angus felt an immense sense of guilt and sadness and grief and considered retiring altogether. After 43 years at sea, he was tired of fishing and sailing and racing. However, the Bluenose was once again challenged to a race, and not one to deny the people.
Back down from competition.
In 1938, the Bluenose entered and won her final series. Yeah. At this point, Angus decided to celebrate his victory by grabbing himself a trophy wife.
Yeah,
and married a woman named Mildred Anna Butler. He was welcomed home to Lunenburg with a bit of an icy reception. His sons, having just lost their mother a year earlier, he now has this young new wife.
She was also like the same age as one of his sons.
Yeah, she's like, I don't know the actual age difference, but it was like in the double digits. She's considerably younger than him.
Yeah.
But Angus's old ways ensured that the marriage would be just as unhappy as the last one.
Yep.
Despite his determination to spend more time at home, Angus was more devoted to the Bluenose.
Yeah.
The creditors were demanding repayment for the installed engines on the aging Bluenose, and so Angus put up $7,000 of his own money and took sole possession of the ship. Over the next few years, Angus tried desperately to try and save the Bluenose in any way he could, but no one was interested in buying her as a tourist attraction.
No.
So he's basically going to the government saying, like, buy my ship.
He tried to do tours in the harbor with the Bluenose, which I mean, like, now makes piles of money for the Bluenose, but I mean, then it just wasn't as profitable.
It wasn't like old enough to be interesting.
Exactly.
It's like, why would I just go do the thing that I see people do all the time?
Exactly.
Especially in Lunenburg, where it's not like an anomaly.
No, exactly.
Like everybody's been on a schooner before.
Yeah.
In 1942, when the world was at war, Angus was having to face with putting the Bluenose up for auction.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that because the world is at war, the government isn't like spending money on tourism. They're like, all of our money is going towards the war effort.
Exactly.
Two American entrepreneurs offered Angus $20,000 in cash for her, and Angus had no other choice but to sell.
Yeah.
The Bluenose, the queen of the North Atlantic, would never see home again. The Bluenose spent the next 2 years as a merchant ship taking cargo between Caribbean ports. Now, maybe you can like clarify this for me, but like I saw in some they like saw off her mast, and she's basically just like a ferry. Like I couldn't tell if it was being used as a barge or as an actual ship.
So she was sold to the India Trading Company, and yeah, they sawed off her masts and they just used her engine. Like she wasn't used sailing, so it was just so they could use her engine and load more stuff on, because masts do take up a bit of space, a bit of room. Right. They were kind of using her as more like as a cargo freighter than as a schooner.
Yeah. And this kind of like second career also doesn't last very long, because on January 29th, 1946, Angus was at the Lunenburg Curling Club when he heard the news that the Bluenose had struck a reef off the coast of Haiti and sunk.
So this is actually quite scandalous. There's a bit of controversy around the end of the Bluenose's life, which is that... So apparently the Bluenose struck a coral reef and sunk when she was working for the India Trading Company, East India Trading Company. However, interestingly enough, the reef that she struck, like at that time, there was no cargo on her, and no lives were lost, and there were hardly any crew on her either, and they were all quickly saved by boats that seemed to be ready for that. Like they were already in the area.
This is like an insurance scheme.
So basically, it's very widely believed in the fishing industry, and especially now today that it was an insurance scam, that they just needed to get rid of this old like crappy boat that they had kind of like destroyed to be a freighter, and they just wanted to get rid of it, and they didn't want to, they knew they weren't going to be able to sell it, and just kind of wanted rid of it. Yeah. And so she is at the bottom of the ocean in Haiti, which is
Have they ever done
sad.
dives or anything?
Yeah, they people dive. People have dove and went
cool.
down and seen her. I mean, there were no really original artifacts on it.
No.
I mean, that was all kind of stripped when she was sold. Anything that would be of like value. But yeah, people have gone and done dives on it. When I was actually in the BVI's more than a year ago, I met a man there who was like an entertainer at one of the like resorts.
Oh, okay.
And he did this whole like pirate thing, but he was raising money for a school that he had built in Haiti. And that was a fully running school, and it was called Bluenose Academy, which is the name of the elementary school in Lunenburg now. When they rebuilt the elementary school. So he has actually been to the Bluenose dive site and like dove on it, and he was like, it was really cool to meet him because that's how he ended his show. So at the end of the show, he told the story and was looking for donations for this school that he runs. He's got 2 schools. He and his wife have done all of this. Really cool story. But I was like, I'm from Lunenburg. Like I sailed on the Bluenose, and so we had this like really cool moment where we talked about that. But yeah, so it is definitely a place you can access.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So Angus expected that as the age of sail died, so would the Bluenose's fame. Like everything is just kind of gonna, this time in his life it will be forgotten, whatever. Yeah. But the opposite proved to be true. Every year, instead of fewer and fewer people coming to Lunenburg to talk to him, each new year brought new people. People wanted to relive the experiences of the Bluenose with him. So people are like, there's no formal tourism around it. So people just kind of like go to Lunenburg and try to find Angus.
His house, which is how the house became kind of a museum. So many people would come.
Just like, hello. And he's like, fuck. I can see him hating that too. Like, I'm sure he loved to talk about the Bluenose, but I'm sure he hated like people having to show up. And it said like his grandson said that like he basically ran a dairy business for like the back half of his life.
Yeah, he did. He was a milkman.
Yeah.
Yeah, and his grandson was also a captain of the Bluenose. Yeah.
Bluenose too.
Yeah, of the Bluenose too. So was the last captain before the current captain. The current captain's been the captain for 20 some odd years.
Yeah.
Which is, I think he's been a part of the Bluenose for like 30 some odd years because he started when he was 16.
Yeah.
Yeah, he started just doing the program that I did. So he started as a deckhand. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so he started as a deckhand, worked his way up to bosun, and then I think he jumped right to first mate and then captain.
Cool.
So, yeah. And now his son's on the Bluenose.
Oh, really?
Nate, yeah. Nate Watson.
That's like 4 generations of Walters.
Oh, no. So I was talking about the current captain of the Bluenose. So after Angus Walters' grandson was on.
Gotcha.
Yeah. He was known to be a very, very cranky man. Yes. So the town of Lunenburg thinks of him. He was very cranky.
So because so many people are coming to him, he kind of has this like, oh, maybe we can do something.
Let's do it again, boys.
And so in 1960, when Smith and Rulin Shipyard built the replica of the Bounty for the MGM mutiny on the Bounty.
Yeah, it's a movie.
Which, like, it was just such a strange sentence to write out. It's like the Bounty for the MGM mutiny on the Bounty.
Yeah, so it's actually a great movie. 10 out of 10 recommend you watch it. It's a lot of fun. It's a good, if you like traditional sailing vessels. It's a cool. They built a full replica of her. So
watch Mutiny on the Bounty.
Yeah,
everyone
do it.
So people wondered if a replica of the Bluenose could be built. And in 1963, the Olins of Olin Brewery funded funded the building of an exact replica of the original Bluenose as a marketing tool for their new schooner beer,
which has the Bluenose on it.
It doesn't say
Bluenose on it, but it's just like the dime. It it is the Bluenose. It's the design of the Bluenose.
Schooner beer, fine.
Yeah.
You can still buy it today.
Sure can. I mean, it's all right.
It's all right. It's fine.
Better when it's cold.
That's the best slogan for a beer. Schooner beer, better when cold.
Well, I mean, it's like Coors. It's like if you have to market that your beer is the coldest, like
know.
it's obviously not great.
Many of the builders of the original ship were employed to build the replica, and Angus once again helped. He drove the symbolic golden spike as the start of construction.
He sure did.
And was consulted at every stage. Now, I have a feeling that if he wasn't consulted, he would force his consultation upon the building of the ship.
I don't think that was a choice of everyone. I think that was kind of a general thing. Like, the people at the shipyard were like, okay, if we don't ask Angus for his opinions, like, and accept them willingly, he's gonna give it anyway. And so just like, let's put ourselves in that mindset that we want his feedback.
Yeah.
Let's keep the man happy.
I just imagine them going to work in their building, and then like out of the ground, it's like, he's back.
Yeah.
He's just there, and he's like, hello, boys.
Or they're just like building, and then he just pops up, and
he's also
just
like an old man by this point.
Yeah.
He's like in his late 60s.
Like I said, he just always looked kind of old in any documentation for the Bluenose.
The ship was launched on the 24th of July, 1963, before a crowd of 50,000 people, which is a lot for Lunenburg. Lunenburg's not a big town.
Nope. I think the current population of Lunenburg is about 12,000, so.
Oh, I underestimated how young. So, at the spry age of 82. So, he's in his 80s at this point.
He's an old friggin' man.
Angus saw the Bluenose 2 sail again. Well, sail for the first time, but the Bluenose is sailing again, and he was on board for her first voyage.
So, fun fact. Do you want to know why it's called the Bluenose 2 and not just the Bluenose? Because
I'm guessing it's because you can't rename a ship, right?
See, you can if it's a replica. So every other replica of a ship, like the Columbia, there's a Columbia, and it's, just called the Columbia. It's not called the Columbia 2. It's because in the time that the Bluenose was gone, before there was a Bluenose 2, a ferry service had a ferry called the Bluenose. And you can't have two ships registered with the same name.
Right.
Any two ships. Like, so its names are unique to ships. And it doesn't matter if it's a pleasure craft in Florida and a chartered yacht in the BVI's. You can't have two registered ships. And so it was kind of an annoyance. It was like,
did they try and get that ferry to change its name?
Yeah, and the ferry was just like, nah. Like, they don't have to. So
I know, but it's just like, please.
Yeah, and they were just like, no. Next question. So yeah, they ended up having to call her the Bluenose 2, which is, and it's II. Yes. It's not a number.
Roman
it's
numerals.
Not the word. It is the Roman numerals, which again is very specific.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, the Bluenose 2 was captained first by Angus's grandson, and then the Bluenose 2 in like 2009 went under this massive rebuild.
Yeah.
Which it's the same ship. It's not a new ship. Wink.
Wink.
They're like, these are the pieces of the ship that are original. But now the Bluenose 2, she's all refabbed and refurbished, and she's sailing the seas again.
She is. What I told people when I worked on her in 2018, people would be like, well, wasn't the whole thing rebuilt? And I would say my comment was, it was a rebuild of the entire hull.
Right.
Which that's all of the ship except the masts. basically so it's like, and they're like, oh just the hull, and I'm like,
just the hull.
Yeah. I mean, when they rebuilt it, the Bluenose 2 didn't, obviously the original Bluenose didn't, but the Bluenose 2 didn't have washers and dryers and showers and women's quarters. Like those things just weren't there. So I mean, obviously, like, advancements had to be made. She's being used now as a sail training vessel and a ambassador for Canadian sailing and Nova Scotian sailing.
Yeah.
She is Nova Scotia sailing ambassador.
Yeah. Because now in the 70s, Olin sold the Bluenose to the province of Nova Scotia.
Yes, sorry, I jumped ahead.
No. I'm done my spiel.
Do you know how much the Bluenose was sold for?
For $1 in 10 dimes.
In
correct?
10 dimes, yes.
Because we're hilarious.
Yes, which I actually didn't know until I sailed on the Bluenose, that the Bluenose has been on the dime since the original Bluenose.
Yeah,
that wasn't like a.
It's not the Bluenose 2 on the dime.
No,
it's the Bluenose on the dime,
and it's actually what technically, if you look up like a description of what is on the dime, it's a William J. Ruey model.
Oh, okay.
So
okay.
it's his design, which is the Bluenose.
Yes.
But it's yeah, that's what it says. It's that it's a William J. Ruey schooner design.
Yeah. And it's a benefit to the Bluenose too today that the original Bluenose was constructed as such a project and a scheme to specifically win something, because you have such better records of the chances that those plans would exist otherwise to rebuild it.
Oh, 100%.
It's questionable.
100%.
If it was built like any other ship in a shipyard,
yeah,
it's because she was built with such an intention that we know so much about her.
Exactly. And she is a really beautiful ship to sail on. One thing about the Bluenose is that because it is built as a schooner to race, the nice thing about it is that it's a lot like sailing a small boat in that she might be 299 tons, but you can move her. Like if you want to go to starboard side, which is right, you can get her to go there. Like it's very easy. Another kind of fun fact about the Bluenose is that a lot of people come on and will comment that the wheel is on backwards, because you face the wheel is to your side.
Okay. And
you face forward, so you face the foredeck, and the wheel is in the aft. It's in the back.
Right.
So you kind of you steer her on your side. So instead of facing the wheel, facing the wheel and holding it with both hands, you're looking forward on the boat, which is how traditional schooners were built, because
this is not Pirates of the Caribbean.
No, they're on a rudder. So schooners were traditionally on a rudder, and the rudder is slanted, and that's what moves the boat. So it's like a fin on the bottom of the boat.
Cool.
Yeah. So it was a really awesome experience. I seriously recommend anybody do it if you would like to. I met some really amazing friends and amazing people and had a great experience. So, and happy 100th birthday.
Yeah, happy 100th birthday.
To the OG gal.
Wherever you are.
Yeah, bottom of the ocean. Well, thank you so much for indulging me this week, and us having.
I have to say, I've never gone in and learned more, which is a great thing. I love it.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's nice to kind of be on that side. Yeah. So for those of you who aren't following us, who stumbled upon this episode of the podcast, thank you for joining us for the ride, and please give us a follow. So we're on Instagram at Minute Women Podcast and on Facebook at the same name, and then you can also find us on Twitter at the Minute Women. And you can also find us on our website, which is www.minutewomenpodcast.ca. And all of our sources and episodes are there, as well as extra info about Grace and I, and all of our contact if you want to get in touch.
And be sure you're subscribed to the podcast on whatever podcast platform you listen to us on. Download the episodes, rate and review the podcast if that's an option on your platform. Also, we'll leave links to Devin so you can find her book and learn all about her work. And you can also check out our merch store, which is on TeePublic. But other than that, we'll see you guys next Wednesday.
Bye.
Bye. Esperanto from is it Gloucester or
Gloucester? I know, it's weird.
I know,
but it's Gloucester.
Angus sailed the Bluenose to what is it again?
Gloucester.
The sea throws me off.
It's weird.